Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the HERBGARDEN knitwear podcast. My name is Hanna. I'm the maker and designer behind HERBGARDEN knitwear, and in this episode I have 3 finished objects that I can share with you and a new summer cast on. And as this is kind of an anniversary episode, I thought I'd give you a little bit of an introduction to myself. So here we go, let's dive right in. Hello and a very warm welcome. If you are a returning viewer, it's wonderful to have you here. If you are a new viewer, this is an anniversary episode. I started this channel about 1 year ago from now, and I'm very happy that we just recently reached 1,000 subscribers. I'm so happy that each and every one of you is here and decided to join me on my knitting journey. And I thought we'd start today with a little bit of an introduction. So my name is Hanna. I am located in northern Germany, and I learned to sew way before I started knitting. So I was allowed to use my mom's sewing machine when I was in elementary school, and I made little tiny dresses for my dolls and stuff like that. So in those early days, I guess once I asked to learn to knit, but when my mom kindly showed me, I was way too impatient to start knitting back then. So I started knitting in my late 20s. That is about, 8 years ago now. So maybe it was about 2015, 2016, somewhere around then. And in 2019, I founded HERBGARDEN knitwear and have been releasing knitting patterns ever since. I believe there are currently 32 patterns, no, not 22, 32 patterns in my Ravelry store. And there have been ups and downs during this whole designing journey. But all in all, I am very happy to have started it. It's lovely to have this knitting community, both here on YouTube and also on Instagram, where you can also find me as HERBGARDEN knitwear. And I really enjoy it, and I don't think I'm ever able to stop designing, just because I feel like it's my kind of creative outlet and what I love to do in my free time. I work as a software developer in real life, so I'm a programmer, and of course a little bit of technical knowledge comes in handy, both for making these videos but also for pattern writing and using Excel sheets and stuff like that. Yes, so what more can I share about me? I love gardening, hence the name HERBGARDEN knitwear. I love to make herbs and garlic butter for a barbecue, for example. And I still love to sew. I don't do it as much anymore because I don't enjoy it as much as I enjoy knitting. Because knitting is so forgiving, you can rip back as many times as you want, and you can still get a beautiful item, while if you sew, you cut your fabric and that's that. Yeah. But I still sew sometimes a little bit. And I also love to read. I love to take walks to a nearby park mainly. And in this park there is a small area where they have farm animals, and in this time of the year it's always a lot of fun because they're usually little lambs and also like baby goats, and I went there yesterday, and there are right now also little piglets, tiny sweet piglets, and I hope I will be able to include some footage here in this video. Either you have already seen it in the intro, or I will put it at the end of this video. Yeah, maybe we can do it like this. If you have any more questions about me or my knitting journey or something like that, then you just drop them in the comments down below, and I will pick them up in a future episode. So usually I am a monogamous knitter, and that means I only work at one project at a time. Very rarely I do cast on something new, even though my current whip is not finished yet, but in that case I usually always finish the new cast on and then get back to the whip that I was working on. I don't really have many whips going at the same time. And I really enjoy that because everything else overwhelms me a little bit, and I really like that this way I really can see the progress that I make with my projects. But that also means that I usually do not have a lot of projects to show within a podcast episode. In this episode I have quite a lot. The last one, I think the last episode that I recorded was about 3 to 4 weeks ago, so that is quite some time I had for knitting. Yes, but usually I do not have like 3 to 5 whips. I have only one whip and usually only one finished item. So what I decided to do for this podcast is that at the end of each episode I am including something I call an informational segment. So that is usually something that is helpful for other knitters. Something I learned from experience, or something I read, or it doesn't matter really. Usually I ask for topics that you would like me to talk about, and in this episode I am going to share about how to buy yarn online that you haven't seen before. That was a suggestion one of you lovely viewers gave me under one of the previous episodes. I think it's quite a while back since that suggestion was given, and sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to go back to these topics, but I have a list of topics, and whenever someone suggests a new topic I put this on my list, and at some point I come back to it and talk about it. So I've gotten 2 other great suggestions lately, which I really want to pick up as well, but I feel they need a little more of preparation, and therefore I will probably do it maybe even not as an informational segment, but as a separate video. So one of these topics is how to calculate a pattern for a different gauge. So if you cannot meet gauge that is stated in the pattern, and you have a different gauge and you still want to make this pattern, it is possible to recalculate the whole pattern to match your gauge, but that is quite a lot of work, and I don't think that I can just do it at the end of this video or at any podcast episode really, but I think that would be a great separate video. So I am planning to do that, but bear with me, I might need some time for that. And the other topic that I thought was very interesting is if you do the tubular bind off, then you can do a different ways basically. there can be no setup rounds for the bind off, there can be 2 setup rounds, and there can be 4 setup rounds. And I think it would be great if we looked into this with knit examples, but it takes some time for me to actually knit those up. So this is something I want to get back to in another video as well. So, but for today, the question was how can we buy yarn without being disappointed if we do not have a local yarn store near to us and want to buy yarn online. So that's coming up in the very end of this episode. So let's start. First things first, I am wearing my Feldspar Tee today. I believe I have not yet shown this on the podcast before. It was first published in the Quick and Easy Knits Volume 2 from Interweave. I believe it was 2 years ago in June, and the pattern is now available as an individual pattern in my Ravelry store. I upgraded the size range, and this is my absolute favorite summer tee. And what I love most is this stitch detail here on the shoulder. I'm now aware that I probably should have worn the light blue version. I have knit 2 of these. This is black, and I have another one in a very pale blue. And if I had worn the blue one, you would have seen the details a lot better. Yeah, but maybe you can stencil it. Here's the little eyelet row, and here are beautiful eyelets on the shoulder. And we have like little garter ridges, and there's the same eyelet row here on the bottom. It's very, very drapey, and I really enjoy wearing it a lot. It's Sandnesline, which is a yarn blend with cotton, viscose, and linen, and it's absolutely perfect for summer garments. So let's start with the finished objects. I have finished 2 pairs of Seaborn Socks since we last spoke. So this one I finished first. It has this lovely speckled yarn and rusty stripes and the typical Seaborn shell pattern. And I used Retrosaria Mondim, which is 100% Portuguese wool sock yarn, so without nylon content. And after I finished this pair, I cast on a new one using the yarn that I used for the stripes. So the rust color that I used in this socks and for the stripes is the color 111, and this lovely speckled yarn here, it is the color 213, I believe. And I found these socks are very lovely projects to work on the go. So if I go to my weekly knitting groups, then I discovered that working socks during that time is just perfect. So yeah, and I should also mention that there is currently a knitalong for the Seaborn Socks running. It is still running till the end of May, so 4 more weeks, and you are very welcome to join us. We are knitting Seaborn Socks, and you can use the hashtag SeabornSockCal on Instagram if you want to be eligible to win a prize at the end of May. Yeah, so these are my Seaborn Socks, and these are pair number 4 and 5, and I have already cast on a 6th pair of Seaborn socks, and those are for my mom. I have forgotten to bring them here with me, so hang on a second, I will grab them. So while I went and grabbed those socks that I'm currently knitting on, I also quickly fetched my other Feldspar Tee so that I can show you. It comes right out of the cupboard, so it is a little bit wrinkly maybe, but that goes away within minutes while you wear it. So it has these lovely short sleeves and this beautiful stitch detail that you can hopefully now see a lot better than in the black version. I have to think of that in the future. So yeah, so you basically cast on the bottom edge and then work in the round until you split for front and back. You cast on a few extra stitches here at the underarm so that you have a nicer fit, and then you work a front and back separately, and then close the shoulder seams with the 3 needle bind-ups. So this tee is worked seamlessly entirely. There are no seams at all. And it is really the absolute perfect summer knit for beginner knitters, which is why it was in the Quick and Easy Knits magazine. So I can highly recommend this. I will probably make more of these in the future. It is really my favorite summer tee to wear. It's very, very comfortable, a very quick knit, and very affordable as well. So the Feldspar Tee, everyone. I hope you love it just as much as I do. I believe I upgraded the size range to include 22 sizes, and I have also included a section where I explain how you can choose an upper arm circumference to any bust circumference. So how you combine 2 of those things to make your tee that fits you perfectly. Yeah, so, but back to the socks. This is now Seaborn sock. This is like pair number 6. And I'm once again using Retrosaria Mondim, and the colorway is, let me check. I usually have the ball band tucked inside. So this is color 308. Or it's this way. Yeah. And this pair is going to be for my mom, and she likes her socks to have a rather long legs, so I'm still knitting in the round happily, and I think this color really is gorgeous. Yeah. Now you maybe ask, well, didn't you say you have a spring summer cast on, and didn't you say you are a monogamous knitter? Yes. I only recently started to knit socks. I have spent many years as a knitter without knitting socks at all, and I started socks in February 2023, and today, as I'm recording, this is May 1st of 2023, so happy May 1st to everyone. And I just discovered that I really prefer socks as my knitting on the go project. Usually I had my one whip, the one whip that I only ever have, and this would be the whip that I would also carry around with me. And now that I have started to knit socks, I found it very, very convenient to have a pair of socks in my bag to just keep on knitting on whenever I'm not at home. So maybe I'm not like a total monogamous knitter anymore, but I still don't have a lot of whips going at the same time, if you do not count socks, I guess. But I would never cast on more than one pair of socks at a time. I really want to finish the things that I start. That everything else makes me a little nervous, I guess. So yeah, if you want to join the Seaborn Socks knit along, you are very welcome to. I would love to see your version. The pattern is available on Ravelry in 5 sizes. There is 1 size for small children. There are 2 sizes for let's say smaller adult feet, and 2 sizes for larger adult feet, and I think you will be able to find a size for you within this pattern. And I've also included instructions on how you can modify both the width and the length of the foot and just adapt it to your feet to fit you perfectly. Yeah, so consider if you want to join our knit along. It would be a lot of fun. We have a little Instagram group, chat group there for the knit along, and if you want to be added to that chat group, you can just send me a message and I will happily do so. Now, I've jumped back and forth between finished objects and this sock cast on, but I have one very, very big finished object that I have to show you, and that I really, really want to show you. So I have cast on, since we last spoke, a new sweater, and I finished it entirely. Ta-da! This I have named Poise. This is the Poise sweater, and I knit this holding 2 strands of Holst Super Soft throughout. It is a top-down circular yoke sweater, entirely seamless, and what can I say? This sweater is special to me. It has a special place in my heart because I consider myself mainly a sweater knitter. I also love the occasional shawl or the occasional hat, but sweaters are my favorite kind of projects, and usually I am able to finish a sweater in about 14 to 18 days if I knit in the evenings only. And I was a little bit in a knitting rut, I guess. The last sweater I finished, aside from this one, I finished in May 2022, so it really is 1 year ago. I have cast on other sweaters in between, but none of them worked out. So this was kind of a big relief, and it was so much fun, and it just flew off my needles, and it was the biggest pleasure to knit the sweater. So I believe it took me 9 days to cast on and knit the sweater and bind it off. And it is a long sleeve sweater, a little bit cropped, but not like totally cropped. And I am so happy how this turned out. The fabric is very squishy, it feels very warm, and as always when you work with Holst Super Soft, in the beginning it has still a lot of spinning oil in it, but when you wash it, it blooms so beautifully. I absolutely love that. So let me give you a close-up. So there's a little bit of color work up here, which is a very, very easy color work, like as easy as it gets. Then we have a little section here of textured stitches, which are also a lot easier to work than it might appear here. And then we have another color work band, which looks maybe a little bit intricate and maybe difficult, but it is not as difficult as it looks, because you do not have to catch floats. The stitches in between the colors are never more than 4 or 5 stitches, so you do not have to catch your floats. And I included some short row shaping in the back, so you can maybe see that the back is a little higher than the front. If you look here in the distance between the neckband and the color work, it's rather short, and in the back there's quite a bit of fabric between that, the neckband and the color work, which makes this sweater fit perfectly. And yeah, what can I say? I am completely in love with this sweater. I really love it. I love how it turned out. I love how the pattern writing process went with this. It was it was all a little magical to me, to be honest, because it went so much faster than all of this usually does for me. So 9 days of knitting, 2 days grading and writing the pattern, which like that never happened to me ever before. And right now this pattern is with my tag editor. We already completed the first round of tag editing, and I believe that I will be able to call for testers for this sweater by the end of the week. So I believe 6 or 7 days, May 7th, something like that, depending on how the tag editing process will go from here. Yeah, so I already said I held 2 strands of Holst Super Soft. This is the main color. It is called Space, and this is the contrast color. It is called Almond, and the gauge is 20 stitches and 32 rows, and I used a 4mm needle for the main fabric and a 3.5mm needle for the ribbing. Yes, this is the Poise sweater, and it might be the favorite sweater I've ever made. I know I probably change my mind as soon as other sweaters come around, but I really feel that this one somehow is special to me. For example, it also, not only that it goes so fast, but it also is the 30th pattern that I worked together on with my tag editor, so it kind of is an anniversary pattern as well. Yeah, I can't wait to wear this constantly, always. Yeah. Yes. And in case you were wondering, the other pattern we are currently working on is the Oneiro Cardigan. I also forgot that one. Let me get that. So I already showed you this sample in the past, which was the first Oneiro cardigan that I knit. But I have not yet shown you on the podcast the second version. This is the one that was pictured in Pom Pom magazine issue 40 called Dreamscape, and it was now sent back to me, and this is the second pattern that my tech editor and I are currently working on, and I will call for testers for this one as well at the end of the week. If you're wondering, the pattern already was published, so it is already available in the digital copy of Pom Pom magazine, but I have now regained the rights to publish it myself, so that is what I will do, and that is why I call for testers, because in order to republish or self-publish this pattern after it was in a magazine, you need to reformat the pattern to fit your own pattern style and layout and use your own abbreviations and stuff like that. And as in this process of reformatting and rewriting the pattern, it is still possible that I messed something up in this process. This is why I want the pattern to be test knit again in order to prepare for the re-release. So just in case you were wondering. So to sum this up, I'm sorry if this is all a little fast today. The Oneiro cardigan, which I have 2 samples of, and the Poise sweater we'll be probably both ready to be test knit within the first week of May. And if you are interested in testing one of these patterns, then please follow me on Instagram, because there I will call for testers, and you might want to keep an eye out for that. Now, finally, let's chat about the new summer cast on. I decided to use Sandnes Line again, which is the same yarn as for the Feldspar Tee that I'm wearing today, but I will use the color, what it's called, 6061. And it appears a little bit darker on camera than it actually is. It's a little lighter in real life. And I have decided to, come on. I have decided to cast on another drop shoulder summer tee, and this is my swatch. I have basically mainly stockinette, but every now and then I have this texture rose, and I think that looks quite pretty. And this is how far I've come. It looks tiny because of the needle that's in there, but I have a very lovely rip at the bottom, and I already started to work 2 repeats of the main pattern. And I think the color is lovely, and this is going to be a very, very versatile and very easy to wear summer tee. So I plan to do it construction wise very similar as the Feldspar Tee. You're going to work in the round until you split for front and back. Then you work the front and the back flat. And for this one I am planning to have a round neckline, not a boat neck like this, but rather a round neckline with a little bit of ribbing. And then you will pick up for the sleeves and have a short sleeve similar to the Feldspar Tee. And I cast this on yesterday at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and I think this will knit up super fast. Yeah, I'm very happy with it so far. I think I am running out of memory card space, so I think I will pause for a second here and transfer the footage to my computer, and then I come back for the informational segment. So please hold on. So I have now cleared my memory card, and now we can dive into the informational segment of this episode. So I was asked, how can you buy yarn online where you cannot touch it, where you cannot see the colors quite right because the computer screen sometimes messes with the color a little bit, without afterwards being disappointed with the yarn that you bought? And I think that is an awesome question. Of course, whenever you buy online, there is always a little bit of a risk, but I think there are some things you can do to minimize that risk. First thing that I would suggest is get a pretty good idea of what yarns you like in general, or what particular kind of yarn you want for the project that you are wanting a yarn for. So for example, I know that I usually prefer to work with rustic woolen yarns, and I do not like superwash yarns as much. That is just personal preference, but that is something that is very good to know if you're looking for a yarn online. Then in general, I would always check the weight to length ratio. So usually you have a certain amount of grams, 50 grams, 100 grams, and a certain length. And that will give you an idea if the yarn is I'm trying to avoid the word yarn weight here, because I feel like yarn weights doing much more harm in finding a yarn than they really help. So, but you will, by checking this length to weight ratio, you get an idea about how thin or thick this yarn is, and if it is what you are looking for or what is suited for the project that you are trying to find a yarn for. So why I usually try to avoid yarn weights is for the simple reason as I feel that yarn weights are not very precise. So I know that some people measure yarn weights by reps per inch, so how many times you can wrap the yarn around your needle over 1 inch. But I have heard other definitions of yarn weights too, and maybe you can think about this a little bit. If you enjoy watching knitting podcasts or read the captions on Instagram posts about knitting, how many times have you heard something like, this yarn is supposed to be yarn weight X, but it feels more like yarn weight Y? So I've heard this like countless times, and this is why I usually feel yarn weights are not really helping a lot. And fun fact, maybe here in Germany, we do not have yarn weights at all. It comes to us from the US and the UK maybe, but traditionally we did not use yarn weights at all. We didn't have them. Now that the world is more connected, of course, we've heard of that, and some fellow German knitters that I know also look for certain yarn weights, but this is something that is very, very new and not something that we had here in all the years of German knitting tradition. So yeah, but I'm digressing a little bit. So I would always check if the grams to length ratio of a yarn is within the range you're looking for. Because otherwise you might get a yarn that looks very pretty and has all the colors that you like, but is not like the right size of what you're looking for. And you probably won't get gauge with it. When it comes to the colors of a yarn, then I found 2 things helpful. So most large yarn brands do have color cards, so that are small pieces of paper where all the colorways of a yarn are pictured on together. So they're like these tiny little strands, like tiny tassels or something like that, attached to a piece of paper, so that you can see all the colors at once, which sometimes helps to distinguish if some colors really work together, and also it gives you another impression of the shade that the yarn really has. And another thing that I always do, because as we already said, computer screens can really give a wrong impression of a color of a yarn. For yarns that are very widely used and very, very popular with other knitters, you can always go to Ravelry, and there is the option to look at all the projects that are made with a specific colorway of a yarn. So you can, for example, I have said I worked with Holst Super Soft, and I'm pretty sure if I'm going to Ravelry and I look at the colorways, I will find the colorway. For example, this one was almond, and then I can search for all the projects that only used or at least once used this shade. And if I look at many projects and many different lighting conditions, like pictures taken outside, pictures taken inside, then over all these pictures, I get a better impression of how the yarn might look in real life, and if the online store pictures of this yarn are representative of the actual color. I hope that might help too. Then in general, I think it is very safe if you order yarns online that you have already worked with before. So if you just want to choose another colorway, and if you want to buy a yarn that you have never worked with before, then I guess there are several things you can do. You can once again check Ravelry, but also Instagram, and search for projects made with that yarn and see if you like the yarn, how it looks knit up. Especially for hand-dyed yarns, it might be interesting to see how it looks knit up, because that can be very unexpected. If you see a yarn that is just sitting there in a hank or a skein, then it's sometimes very hard to imagine how this yarn will look when it's knit up. So I really would always go and look at pictures from other knitters. And you could also, if you know somebody who has already worked with the yarn, or who at least has the yarn already at home, you could just ask them if they like the qualities of the yarn. And you could also check for informations like that on other people's Ravelry projects and Instagram posts as well. If they were happy with the yarn, you could also just contact somebody who has worked with a yarn that you are interested in and just ask them. I have had inquiries like that as well with my Ravelry projects. That is also very helpful. And in general, if you are looking for a substitute yarn for a specific pattern, then you might want to check out one of the earlier podcast episodes that I have made, because there I have like a huge section about how to find the perfect substitute yarn. Another thing that I would suggest when buying yarn online is trying to buy from an online store that is still pretty close to you. So I usually avoid buying yarn from overseas, because the shipping is very expensive, and if I am not happy with the yarn, it is very expensive once again, but also very inconvenient to have it shipped back. So this is also something I think would be very helpful. If you buy online, try to buy as locally as you can, even if it's online, so that you do not have to ship it for this massive amount of money. Yeah, so in general, I think this would be a topic where everyone could share their experiences with buying yarn online. I think I forgot one thing. It is not always, but in many cases it is possible to contact the online store and just ask them questions about the yarn that you are wanting to buy. So if you're not quite sure, you could just send them a question, and maybe they could sometimes they even help you to pick color combinations, because if you want to pick several colors that somehow work well together, that is sometimes a lot easier if you do it like with the yarns in hand. And sometimes, not in every online store, but sometimes the people there are happy to help you with that. So that would also always be an option. Just contact them and kindly ask for help in selecting colors, or even in selecting yarn. So if you have a pattern, you could also say, hi, I'm looking for yarn for pattern X, and I really want to know if you have a suggestion. Maybe they can help you with that. Yeah. And I don't know, if you have knitting friends close to you, you could always just look into their stash and see if you like yarns that they have there, and then make notes somewhere that you enjoyed that yarn for future online shopping. That is also very helpful. Yeah. Well, maybe everyone can share their experiences of buying online yarn in the comments below. I hope I answered this question, and if there is something that I did not mention that you are interested in, then please let me know. So at the end of each episode, I always highlight another knitter, podcaster or designer, and in this episode I would like to introduce you to Mia from KnitAndGrace. She's a very talented knitter. She has a lovely Instagram account with very beautiful pictures and very beautiful knits. And she also has a wonderful YouTube channel where she recently released 2 very helpful and well thought videos. Very, very good content. The first video was about size-inclusive knitting patterns and size-inclusive knitting, and the second video was about how to fit a knitting pattern to your body. Mia also has experiences in sewing, and she shared something that I totally agree with, that in sewing it is in general very normal, considered usual, that you have to adapt the sewing pattern to your body, and it is very interesting that in knitting people don't find this as normal as sewers do, I feel. Maybe that is something we can chat about in the comments below as well. I feel like as we are all crafters, it should be kind of normal that all our bodies are different and that we need to adapt the patterns, both knitting and sewing patterns, to our body. As you know, I usually try to make my patterns as size inclusive as I can. For example, the Poise sweater that I showed you earlier, if everything goes well, as I said, we are still in the tech editing process, but if everything goes as well, this pattern will be available in 18 sizes. But still, even though I think more and more designers make patterns with a large size range, I feel that it should be considered more normal that patterns need to be adapted to everyone's bodies. For example, I am a very medium size. I'm always quite in the middle of the size range. I have, for reference, 95, 96 centimeters bust, something like that. But I am used to adapting both knitting and sewing patterns to my personal body. So I think the act of adapting the pattern to your personal shape is something that is not something that only people with specific sizes need to do, but people in general need to do that, as we are all shaped differently, which is perfectly fine. Yeah, but I'm digressing a little bit. If you are into topics like this, then as I said, Mia's content is very inspiring. Please check her out. I will link all her profiles like Instagram and YouTube down below. As I said, her handle is KnitAndGrace, and I'm sure you will enjoy her content. I believe that was everything for today. I will, as always, insert a little bit of footage at the end of this video. Usually it's just some plants or animals around of my surroundings, and in this episode I can also share a little bit of footage of our Easter bonfires. So I discovered that this is a tradition that not everybody has, so not even in Germany, I believe. But here in northern Germany, we light big bonfires on the Easter weekend. Usually each village has only one or at least 2 bonfires, and they are really rather large bonfires. And it is basically an old I believe, an old pagan tradition to say goodbye to the winter and welcome spring. And we always do it on the Easter weekend. And I have some footage of that that I can share with you. And I really love that tradition because everybody gathers around. There's usually some kind of food there, sometimes barbecue, and yeah, it's just kind of nice to watch this big fire to burn down over the evening. And it usually will be lit when it just gets dark, so it's like barely getting dark. And then as the fire grows higher and bigger, it gets darker and darker, and that's really lovely. And usually I personally really love the smell of that fire because we only use like leftover scraps and things from the garden. So it's a wood and I don't know, branches fire kind of thing. And on that day, as everybody in the region lights these giant bonfires, the whole air smells like this lovely wooden fire. I don't know, it's something I really enjoy. And if you drive around on that evening, you can see the fires in the distance everywhere, and that's very, very magical. So I have a little bit of footage of that to share with you at the end of this video. Yeah, that was episode 10, anniversary episode. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. And we shall see when I will be back with another episode. Maybe I can report a little bit of progress on the summer cast on that I just started yesterday. Yeah, and as always, see you next time. Bye.